Dallas and the Boys and Girls Club of Fayetteville, where the city is
My name is Peter Nierengarten. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning at the City of Fayetteville. It's really exciting to see such a great crowd tonight for the kickoff event for the Wedington Corridor. I see we've got folks in all different age ranges here tonight. I see one little guy there having his evening bottle. This is a really exciting event for the City of Fayetteville, and particularly this area, the Wedington area. This Wedington Corridor Plan is the fourth neighborhood planning process that the City of Fayetteville has gone through, the third of which that has been staffed by City of Fayetteville staff. We have a talented team from the planning division, from my group in sustainability and strategic planning that's going to work really hard all week in trying to grow your ideas into a vision for the Wedington Corridor. This is a really rewarding process for us because it allows us to engage the public and talk to you about your ideas and your plans and your visions for how you'd like to see this area grow and develop. I'm delighted to be here in this great space that the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club has provided for us, right, nearly in the middle of the Wedington neighborhood. We're really happy that they were able to host us for this evening. The Wedington area has seen tremendous growth in the past 15, 20, 30 years. This is an aerial shot looking at the corridor from I-540 going west. We're going to hear just a little bit about the history of the area in a few moments. But before we do that, I'd like to invite Rhonda Adams to come up here and give you all a proper welcome.
Hi, everybody. I am Rhonda Adams. I'm your Ward 4 representative. I'm in position 1. Everyone who holds position 1 positions in City Council is not running this year. We have 2 more years, and so my signs are not up and down your streets right now. They were 2 years ago. Welcome tonight. This is such an exciting time for us to get together to talk about the future of this part of Ward 4. We've done a great job already. Our city staff and planning people have taken us on a tour. We got together in a van and drove around, and they had a map planned for us, and we got out and walked and felt what it was like to be a walker in the Wedington corridor as well as a driver. I personally have a bicycle that I've ridden around a lot in this area too, and so I know what it feels like to be a bicyclist in this area. It's just very exciting to come together and welcome to all of you tonight, and thank you for participating in this important activity. When we look back at what the City Plan 2030 goals are, I just wanted to briefly remind us together as we put our minds and hearts together to think about what we want to accomplish out of these precious few minutes that we'll have to plan. So Fayetteville will be a resource-efficient community in which citizens and stakeholders can live, work, learn, and grow. We will have adopted policies that enhance the quality of life for all residents, that help to achieve sustainability, that provide economic growth for our community, and policies that will preserve and protect our natural and our cultural resources. We also say that we want our residents to have equitable access to neighborhoods that are healthy, walkable, and distinct. So as we come together to think about those goals and plan together, let's have a good time, treat each other with respect, and enjoy these hours that we have. I look forward to seeing you at all of these events, and thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you very much, Rhonda. So we've gotten our welcome out of the way, and now I'd like to invite Jesse Fulcher, who's a planner with the City of Fayetteville, to come up and talk to us just a little bit about the history of the Wedington corridor.
Thank you, Peter. My name's Jesse Fulcher. As Peter mentioned, I'm with the Planning Division. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the history of the Wedington area. I really didn't know what I was going to get into when I started research in this area, but it's actually a very interesting past and really ties this area, Washington County, Fayetteville. There's a lot of roots for those original places in this area, Farmington, Prairie Grove, and West Fayetteville. In the 1820s is where I'm going to start at and just talk briefly about some of those first pioneers that came into the Arkansas area, and then I'm going to jump forward into the 1960s, 70s, and so we can really concentrate on the actual Wedington corridor that we'll be working on for the next week or so. In the 1820s, actually, Arkansas wasn't even a state at that point. I'm sure some of the history buffs know that. I think it was about 1836 when we achieved statehood. We're actually only a territory at this point, and so we had a lot of settlers coming into the area. And what's interesting, is this better? A little bit better? Do we have volume control? How about if I just speak really loudly? Perfect. Wave at me if you can't hear me or understand me. Thank you. So I use this map. This is about an 1840 map of the Arkansas area. What's interesting about it is Cane Hill is listed on here. It's obvious why Fayetteville would be listed on here. We're the county seat at this point. And Cane Hill is listed on here versus some of the other larger cities that we would think of today. Cane Hill, though, was actually a very populated area in the 1820s and is where many of the original families that came to Arkansas settled. Some of those that you might be familiar with, not necessarily to Cane Hill when they came in, but was the Woolsey family. The Woolsey farm was actually just out the window here past Owl Creek School. They purchased 160 acres in about 1830. It was $1.25 an acre, if you can believe that. They actually originally came from Kentucky and then through Illinois and then down to Arkansas at about 1830. Some of the other historic families that came to Arkansas in this time period, specifically Washington County, Northwest Arkansas, would be the Buchanans. If anybody's familiar with Prairie Grove area, the main street through Prairie Grove is known as Buchanan, and that's from the Buchanan family that came here also in the 1830s. The third family that's obviously significant to this area is the Wedington family. They arrived in approximately 1830 as well. We're friends with the Buchanan family, and William Lewis Wedington is where the Wedington area west of here, Wedington Woods area, is named after, as well as Lake Wedington that was constructed in 1938 was named after the Wedington family. I wasn't sure if Wedington Drive was named after the family specifically, or if it was simply because it was a connection to the Wedington area and Lake Wedington. I think in either case, so we owe the name of Wedington Drive to this historic family that traveled here in the early 19th century. Unfortunately, we don't have any photographs in the 20s and 30s of Arkansas. Camera usage really didn't become popular and available until about the 1880s, 1890s, and that's why you see a lot of photographs of this area beginning at that time period. But I did want to share two photographs because they are in this area somewhat, and just to give you an idea of what the life was in this time period at the beginning of Washington County and the Fayetteville area. This is a photograph about 1900. This is a family in front of their home, and this home actually is located at North and Garland, about where the Harp's grocery store is. This actually is in the Prairie Grove area, and to me provides kind of the evidence of what it must have been like for these early families, the Wedingtons, the Buchanans, the Woolseys especially, that came to this area and settled in western Fayetteville and western Washington County. I think this image says a lot about probably what it was like, a very modest home. In fact, when I read about the Woolsey farm, they said underneath the clapboard siding that is on the side of the house, if you look underneath it, you'll see the original log structure underneath there. So now I want to jump forward to 1965 so we can look at the corridor that we'll be discussing in the next week. And this is a good starting point, and really my only starting point. This is the earliest aerial imagery that we have of this area. As you get further back in the 1950s and 40s, we just didn't have this area photographed. So in 1965, though, it's a good starting point. You can see very clearly that this area is not developed in 1965. I've pointed out two developments that you might recognize. This is just north of Dorothy Jean, right in this area. What's interesting is that there used to be a little dirt road that connected you over. This was before the bypass was built, connected you over to Porter Road. The other development is Rupel and Wedington, so just right up the street from us. And this was the Earl Williams grocery store. Did anyone know or visit the Earl Williams grocery store? Anybody familiar? What can you tell us about it? Do you remember when it closed down, or? Okay. Well, good. I couldn't find any information on it, so I was hoping there would be someone here that could at least tell us about it. One of those interesting little shopping areas, probably serving primarily the residents west of this area, some of the farmers and agricultural families in this area. So the point of this slide, though, is really to show you more of a modern view of the Wedington area, and that it is really a rural and agricultural area at this point in time. I really wanted to find some population statistics on the western portion. They just aren't available at that time period, and especially when you're looking at a smaller portion of the city. So what I looked at was a comparison of Fayetteville, which was growing quite well in this period in the 20th century, and then looked at some of the smaller communities that we talked about earlier, Prairie Grove and Farmington. What's interesting is Fayetteville in 1910 had about 4,000 people living there, and Prairie Grove had just under 1,000. And over the next 50 years, Fayetteville grew to a population of 20,000. Prairie Grove grew by 200. And so it really goes to show that west of the bypass, outside of the main cities, Springdale and Fayetteville, growth really wasn't occurring. These were small farming communities and remained so well into the later part of the 20th century. I didn't have any data on Farmington other than what the population was in 1960. It was 263. And I found out last night from my wife that she believes her dad and his parents were in Farmington at this time, so they're one of the 263 people that were counted in that census, I assume. Jumping forward, 1978, again, this is to illustrate the lack of change, the lack of development, and the rural qualities of the Wedington area. At this point, the 540 bypass, or at that time was really the 71 loop from South School up to North College, had been constructed. It was completed about 1971. Around that same time, Maple Manor Apartments, which is just south of the shopping center and the bus depot building there, that had been constructed. And you can faintly see some of the buildings along Betty Jo going up at that time as well. A few more houses have been built there north of Dorothy Jean. But other than that, there's really nothing else that's changed in that approximately 13-year period. Here's a good stopping point to really look at the development as it starts in 1994. And I vaguely remember going out in this area in the 90s and seeing the development, but it was still fairly isolated. It wasn't a significant change. Most of these projects, looking at our project files, were approved in probably 92, 93. You can see, looking here, that these roads have been cut in, but there's actually no houses being built at this point. So these subdivisions were just getting started at this point in 1994. The Holiday Inn has been constructed. Betty Jo has been finished out. But again, you can see north of these developments and south along Persimmon, nothing has been constructed. In fact, Persimmon and Rupel south in these areas weren't even constructed at this point. But you can see this is kind of the point where everything turned out here, and when it really started to become a suburbanized area. And so skipping over those points in between, I just want to jump to 2012, so you're able to see visually that astounding change between 1994 and 2012. And what's interesting to think about is when you start at 1820 with this discussion, you move forward 160, 170 years, and there's almost no changes to the Wedington corridor. In a matter between 1994 and 2012, approximately 18 years, that's the change that you see, and that's how quickly this area grew. I have a few more slides so you can see these side by side. The 94 aerial and the 2012, these are the exact same location. So you can see the pastures, agricultural properties, and in 2012 that they're subdivisions at this point. This is the same comparison, 1994 to 2012. This is the commercial area. There's the Holiday Inn, and you can see completely filled in with commercial uses in that 18-year period. Visually, to me, that tells a lot about how quickly the changes took place in the Wedington area. But there was two kind of numbers I wanted to point out about housing construction in this area versus the rest of Fayetteville. In 1994, the area of influence, I should explain, is actually larger than the corridor the corridor here is about 350 acres or so, maybe 400 acres. The area of influence includes everything around it. So it goes just on to the east side of 540 and up to just about Mount Comfort. So that area of influence is larger than the corridor plan that we'll be drawing on. In 1994, the units in this area of influence was just below 2,000, and that was actually, I had to go through and kind of count those rooftop by rooftop, look at the number of apartments and duplexes that were existing in 1994, so slightly less than 2,000. In 2010, and that's based on census data and why I'm using 2010 versus 2012, there was over 7,000 residential units in this area, a significant increase in the amount of units available in West Fayetteville. But I think that this actually tells the story very well as well. The percent of housing units as a percentage of Fayetteville. In 1994, there was about 20,000 total residential units in Fayetteville. And West Fayetteville comprised about 10% of all of those units. And that was about 1,700, as I just discussed. In 2010, there's about 30,000 total residential units in Fayetteville. And now West Fayetteville has over 7,000, or 25% of all the housing now exists west of the bypass in this area of influence that we're going to be discussing. That's a fairly amazing amount of growth in that, again, about an 18-year period. And obviously, with all that growth becomes the congestion, something that we've heard about recently, something that we're aware of, something that probably everyone was aware of on the way over here since we started this meeting during rush hour PM, on everybody trying to get home from work. And so I bring you to this final slide, and I appreciate this last point here. We've talked about really where we've been starting way back in the 1820s. We looked at the 1994 and 2012 imagery so you can understand really specifically how this area changed. Even if you were here in 1994, it's different to see it from the air than to see it on the ground. We're all aware of the restaurants that have been built, but when you see it completely and side by side, it's a really amazing thing to see. And so what this corridor plan is this next step about working with the neighborhood, as Peter said, and hearing what your goals are, what your visions are, what your hopes and thoughts are for the development over the next 18 years or longer of the Wedington area. And that's what we'll be doing on Saturday. We're really excited about it. It gives us an opportunity to work on a neighborhood level, which we don't get to do except for every once in a while. This is our fourth plan, as Peter said, so this is the fourth time where we're able to kind of sit down at a table, look at a small area, and hear the voices from the people that are affected, that live in this area. And so again, we think it's a really exciting opportunity, and I hope to see everyone on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you, Jesse. I think that was a really powerful presentation. I think there's a lot to learn from looking at history as we continue to move forward. I think that's probably why they make us study history as we grow up going through school. So this is our kickoff event tonight, kicking off the week-long Wedington Charette events. We're here at the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club. On Saturday, as Jesse mentioned, we're going to have our hands-on design workshop. That'll be again here in this room from 9 a.m. to noon. Then Sunday through Thursday, staff will be continuing to work here at the Boys and Girls Club. We have a conference room. It's right around here somewhere, right down the hall, I think, where we'll be meeting and discussing all of the ideas and information we've received from you all, and we'll be developing that into a plan and a vision for the neighborhood. Then on Monday, we'll have an open house. You'll have a chance to come back and see kind of the design in process. That'll be from 5 to 8 p.m. Out in the hallway and then in our design studio. And then right here in this room on next Thursday, a week from today, we'll give you a work in progress presentation, and that'll be your opportunity to see the results that staff have come up with based on your input. As Jesse mentioned, Saturday is probably the most important and exciting event that we're going to have. That'll be the hands-on design studio. We'll be breaking up into small groups, and you'll have table facilitators that will talk you through three main areas of focus that we're going to be discussing. Those will be developing a sense of neighborhood identity for the West Fayetteville area, talking about land use and how we'd like to see the Wedington corridor continue to develop and or redevelop. And then the hot topic that'll be on everyone's minds that we're going to make you wait until the end to discuss is transportation, and trying to come up with some ideas related to congestion relief, the fact that it's not all that pleasant to walk along Wedington Drive if you're a pedestrian. If you're on a bicycle, sometimes it's really hard to get across the freeway to the trail system. We're going to be talking about all those issues, and we really want to hear your input and hear your vision for how to answer those challenges. As I mentioned, we'll be working at maps in small groups, and after Saturday, when we receive all that input from you all, then staff will be continuing to work here all week in our design studio. Some of the expected outcomes from this process, we'll be developing guiding principles based on information we receive from you all. We'll develop those hopefully rather quickly after Saturday's discussion. Those guiding principles will then be used to develop an implementation plan that'll have short, medium, and long-range implementation steps. It could include some of these items I've listed up here: capital projects, street projects, bicycling improvements, development and zoning changes. It just all depends. These are sort of examples that we've seen come out of previous projects. We'll be developing an illustrative master plan for the area. This is what was developed for the Walker Park neighborhood, and it'll show the build-out vision for the area. And then there'll also be a guidance document that goes along with that. And all of that will go to City Council sometime early next year for adoption by resolution. So if you've got any questions about the events or what's going on during the next week, please visit our website, or I invite you to call the planning office, or feel free to stop by and visit us. Before you go this evening, I would make sure that everyone is signed in. We want to have a good, accurate record of who all's here. And then also the blue surveys. I hope everyone got a chance to fill out one of the surveys. That'll be kind of your first opportunity to provide input into your vision for the area. So please fill one of those out as well. So that's it. Thank you all for coming, and I think we've still got some food and drink over here for you to enjoy. And like I said, please fill out a survey. We're available to chat with you as well. Thanks a lot. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning for the City of Fayetteville. It's my pleasure to welcome you all this morning to the hands-on design workshop for the Wedington Corridor Plan. This is the fourth neighborhood plan that the City of Fayetteville has done. Previous plans have been for the Fayette Junction neighborhood, the Walker Park neighborhood, and then we also did the Downtown Master Plan. I'm particularly excited to be talking to you and sharing this event with you at the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club. This is a really great facility, and we're really pleased that they were able to open their doors and share this great facility with us. It's great to see this crowd here this morning. As you all, I'm sure, very aware, the Wedington corridor has experienced rapid growth in the past 15 to 20 years. A lot of commercial development along the Wedington corridor, a lot of new residential housing surrounding the corridor. And one of the most important questions during this process is how this area will continue to develop and grow. And these developments, they represent a change, and the purpose of getting together this morning is to work together to try and guide how that change will occur over time. So here's our agenda for today's events. We'll do a quick welcome, and then Jesse Fulcher will lead us through a visual preference survey. I'll give a food for thought presentation, kind of get your minds cranking up, and then we'll get down to work at our small groups, and you guys will spend about 90 minutes working together at your tables, coming up with some design solutions for the area. And then at the end, we'll review those results, and everyone will get a chance to present their tables' ideas up at the front. I want to remind you all that we've got food over here for folks. Come on in, Sandra. We've got food and coffee over here, so feel free to mingle over there and help yourself during the event. We've got bathrooms that are down the hall by the entrance. If you have questions specifically where those are at, you can go back to the Boys and Girls Club welcome table, and they can direct you to the bathrooms. We spent the past 3 months as staff getting to know the site and doing research, collecting background information. On Thursday, we held our kickoff event in this room, and today we'll do our hands-on design workshop, and this is probably the most exciting, it's definitely the most participatory piece of this whole plan, so I'm really glad that you were all able to make it today. Our work will continue here at the Boys and Girls Club all of this following week. We'll have a design studio set up in the boardroom just down the hall, and you're welcome to drop in anytime. We'll have an open house scheduled on Monday night that folks are specifically welcome to come to. And then on Thursday, the 1st of November, we'll have a work in progress presentation back in this room. If anybody's got questions about what's going on, feel free to call our planning office or check out our website. I would now like to ask the mayor to come up here and say a few words of welcome to you all.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good to have you here. I'm very excited about days like today. I was an alderman in this ward for about 8 years. Some of you might remember me. Most of the folks in this room know me and have been around me for a better part of 12 years in city government. When I was an alderman, we were just starting to grow out here. I mean, the Boys and Girls Club was about to be constructed, and wastewater treatment plant was being constructed, and this was exploding in growth. Now, I think the thing that your challenge is today is not whether this city's going to grow, but how we're going to grow it. And I'm really excited about hearing the input that we get from you all today about how we build the infrastructure, what kind of growth you want, what kind of boundaries you want in growth, because this area has probably been needing this type of meeting for at least 10 years, at least. So it is just exploded in growth in this area, and we really need your input in this, because this is why it's so important, because whatever we get from you, we'll start planning along that direction, okay? So get involved in this, because your voice does matter, it does count. And so have a great day and plan well. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor Jordan. Jesse Fulcher is now going to come up and lead us in a really exciting exercise called a visual preference survey. Come on up here, Jesse.
Excellent. Thanks, Peter. Can everyone in the back hear me? Thank you, Quinn. Thank you, Tracy. Thank you for introducing this as a very exciting piece. You did not do that for the history piece, but I think it was exciting the other night as well. The visual preference survey, just to give you a little bit of background, we tend to do these for all of our neighborhood plans. The purpose is to show everyone pretty much 2 or 3 alternative images. They're very similar looking to each other, and so what we're trying to get out of the public is some of the elements that you consider good or bad by the way that you vote. So the images will be very similar, and you simply choose on your vote sheet. There should be one for everyone at each table. Looks like this. Just follow along their slides 1 through 18, and just circle your answer. We'll collect those, we'll tally the results, and provide those at the end of the meeting. The other thing I think that this does, especially early on a Saturday morning, is kind of get you in the mindset to think about design solutions, about the built environment, to think about transportation and land use and housing, and just to kind of get everybody on the same page to be thinking about how cities develop. So let's get started. The first survey, or slide 1. This is a teaser, just to get everybody warmed up. So, if you had to choose your preferred captain, would it be Captain Picard A or Captain Kirk B? And can everyone see that in the back? All right, excellent, thank you. I'll give everyone about 20, 30 seconds for each slide. On this particular one, you could tie it, yes. No ties following this. Yes, potentially. Don't raise your hand if you don't know who these people are. All right. Let's move on to slide 2. They aren't nearly as exciting as this. All right, in a commercial area, which type of sidewalk do you prefer? Which type of crosswalk design do you prefer? The one on the left is a raised crosswalk. The one on the right is at grade. It's just simply painted across the pavement. Slide 4, which type of trail do you prefer? The one on the left is adjacent to the street. The one on the right kind of meanders through the environment. Which type of bike lane do you prefer? Here's 3 design options for this one. The one on the left is your on-street. It's shared with a vehicle lane, kind of the sharrows that you see along Lafayette would be an example. Item B is you're still in the street, but you have a separated bike lane. And option 3 is you're physically separated from the street on like a bike track. Item 6, which intersection do you prefer? Slide 7, which single-family home do you prefer? Slide 8, which two-family home do you prefer? Slide 9, which apartment building do you prefer? Slide 10, do you prefer single use? So on the left side is a single use commercial building, meaning there's only commercial uses within it. The slide B has residential units on top of the commercial units on bottom. Slide 11, for commercial design, do you prefer commercial uses with the parking lot? That's A, or without a parking lot with on-street parking provided instead? That's item B.
Can we pretend there's parking around back too?
No right or wrong answers.
Parking deck will be across the street. That's a swirl.
Which street scene do you prefer? Yes. I cannot. That's part of the fun, is for you just to simply look and look at each element of each picture and decide which one you think is.
Tracy, if you come to the front of the class, you'll be able to see it. It's hard to tell even from here.
If you want to come on up, that's fine. It is difficult with sunlight. Slide 13, which intersection design do you prefer? One is a signalized intersection, one is a roundabout intersection. Which 5-lane road design do you prefer? Three items here. Which traffic calming measure do you prefer? Slide A is a physical measure, something that would actually be built in the street. Item B would be educational, and choice C would be enforcement.
Just my neighborhood or somebody else's?
Just a few slides left. Slide 16, which community space would you like to see in the Wedington area? Choice A is more of just a playground type use. B is a natural area. C is more of kind of a plaza type use.
What is C?
More like a public plaza. Slide 17, on which road should high-speed travel be allowed, 40 to 50 miles an hour? The final slide is simply a yes or no. Would you like to see more community gatherings in your neighborhood? And these are simply some examples of the area. All right, if you would just maybe collect all of the vote sheets together, and we'll come by and grab those from you. Thank you all.
All right, thank you, Jesse. I think that was a really provocative presentation. I had trouble choosing between a couple of those different slides. I hope you all had some trouble picking as well. That was kind of the point of it. How many here are familiar with what a charette is? All right, good. We got some experienced folks. So the term charette comes to us from 19th century design schools, and the idea is that it's a design exercise that happens in a condensed time period. The concept is that there's creative energy that happens when ideas merge and combine in one room, and design problems must be solved during that condensed time period. So as part of this charette process, the design team has spent time, as I mentioned, studying the background in the area. We've been taking tours. Here's a photo of our city council tour from the other night. We've been meeting with business owners and various infrastructure groups in the city, police and fire. And now we're here to talk with you all and have you guys work in, as I mentioned, one of the most exciting pieces of this process, where we're getting together as the public and really seizing the opportunity to address some of the design challenges in the Wedington corridor. And as I mentioned earlier, at the end of this table design exercise, you'll be coming up and presenting. Each of your groups will have a spokesperson that will come up and present to all of us. So this next series of slides that I'm going to show you is not meant to tell you what to do. It's really more meant to give you some visual food for thought. No presentation would, the City of Fayetteville planning would be complete without reminding you about the goals of City Plan 2030. The community has decided as a group that we want to make appropriate infill decisions, discourage suburban sprawl, honor the traditional town form, grow a livable and active transportation network, so bicycling, walking, public transit. We want to assemble an enduring green network, and we want to create attainable housing for all of our Fayetteville citizens. People have been flocking to towns and living together in communities for the past 6,000 years, ever since we abandoned a hunter-gatherer way of life and adopted agriculture. People decided to start living and cohabitate in communities together. And cities have really become the containers in which civilization has advanced, and I think neighborhoods in particular speak to our culture and our history. Town building in America has taken many organic forms. Communities all over have developed in different ways. But planners and community members have been making important decisions about where main streets should be, where important buildings should go, and more importantly, where the town should be and where the town should not be. As cities have grown from their small town squares, this is the Fayetteville Square, to communities of 75,000 people or more, they've undergone many changes. And one of the changes that communities that get larger undergo is as their central business district develops, around that, neighborhoods begin to form as sort of autonomous areas where people habitate. And those neighborhoods serve not only as places for residential housing, but also for places such as parks, institutions, schools, and other commercial services that support the daily needs of the residents that live in those neighborhoods. And I think as we think about the Wedington plan, it's important to think about what might be missing in this neighborhood that could help it grow and become a more complete and great neighborhood. On Thursday night, we listened to a great analysis by Jesse Fulcher on the history of the area. He took us all the way back to the early 1800s. But the point that he really drove home is the rapid growth that the area has seen in the past 18 years. And I think that rapid growth is one of the main reasons that City Council supported selecting the Wedington corridor for this year's neighborhood plan. You can see from the air much of the commercial development in the area concentrated nearest the Interstate 540 intersection. Things tend to get a little bit sparse as you move further to the west in the corridor. The entire corridor, the area inside this red boundary, is about 424 acres. 33% of that area is currently undeveloped. We've got 27% residential, and about 18% of that area is commercial. Most of the residential areas are actually surrounding the corridor. Again, these are the residences that are traveling to the corridor to shop and to eat. When we look at the current zoning for the area, you'll see kind of a mix of commercial, residential, and some planned zoning districts. The future zoning map shows blue areas are for commercial, and then the yellow is residential areas. And this is not set in stone. One of the things we want to engage and talk with you about is what changes might we want to see with this zoning. Of course, no analysis is complete unless we look at our environmental resources as well. You can see we've got some streams to the north and to the south of the Wedington corridor. We've got some large enduring green network areas, some wetlands around the wastewater treatment plant, hillside overlay districts. I mentioned 33% of the area is currently undeveloped. Planners call those areas green fields. Those areas have high potential for future development. And one of the things that I think quickly pops into people's mind as we start to think about that 33% of land that's left developing is what's that going to do to an already challenging traffic situation. We've got high speeds on Wedington Drive, and we've got high volumes of traffic as well. As we look at some of the numbers here, you can see the highest volumes of traffic are in this stretch of Wedington that's just to the west of the 540 interchange, and correspondingly, most of the accidents are concentrated in that area as well. When you drill down into the traffic challenges a little more, what quickly becomes apparent is the lack of connectivity in the neighborhood, particularly associated with the one-way across 540. All the traffic has to funnel down to that one five-lane bridge to get across the freeway. Adding to and compounding that is some of the dead-end streets that we have in the area due to some of the incremental and development that's happened in the region. I'm excited to report that we've got 3 bus lines that actually provide transit service inside the Wedington corridor: Razorback Transit, Ozark Regional Transit, and Jefferson lines all come to the area. And we've even got a little transit hub on the southwest corner of Wedington and 540 where all of those buses stop here at the Jefferson lines terminal. The area is particularly conducive, I think, to bicycling due to its flat topography, unlike the rest of the city of Fayetteville. And we've got the start of some on-street bicycling network out here: bike lanes, bike paths, sharrows. Although bicycles have the same connectivity challenge, as this gentleman was realizing when riding across the Wedington Bridge. Not the most pleasant place to ride your bicycle, I can assure you. Folks on foot have the same connectivity issue getting across Wedington Drive. Again, not a very pleasant place to occupy. Along with walking along the Wedington corridor. Again, it's not the most pleasant place to be. But in the neighborhoods, there's really nice sidewalks on at least one side of the street of almost every residential street in this area. And we do have pedestrian push-button signals for crossings along Wedington. But the challenge is that those signals are spaced, pretty far apart. And again, if you've got to walk down Wedington to get one of those signals, next to speed that's going 45 miles an hour, not the most pleasant thing in the world to do. Commercial development in the area has been concentrated nearest, along Wedington, nearest the I-540 interchange, with another commercial node at Wedington and Rupel Drive. Most of the commercial development is medium and small box stores. Very auto-centric with large parking lots out front and buildings set back. Not the most walkable type developments. When we look at the surrounding residential units, again, we've got significant housing surrounding the corridor. 15,000 people live in what we would call the Wedington influence area. That's essentially an area between Mount Comfort Road and MLK down here. And those 15,000 people are the folks, I think, that are most frequently utilizing the services that are inside the Wedington corridor. So I want you guys to really think about how can we better connect those residential areas to the commercial development along the Wedington corridor. Jesse tested our eye with some single-family housing. We've seen an interesting trend recently, moving away from some of the traditional lower density developments, and there's been some higher density developments. Rupel Row is an example we can see right out the window over here. These houses have rear-facing garages and alleys in the back. About the past 5 to 8 years, we've seen more construction of that type of home. About 60% of the housing in the influence area is single family, and about 40% of the housing is multifamily, servicing the needs of many different populations, including students and seniors, and some foreign populations as well. We've got about 3,900 acres of parks and open space in the Wedington influence area, trails, dog parks. We've even got a little golf course near the links. On Thursday night, we took a kickoff survey, and we had you guys identify your favorite places in Northwest Arkansas and your least favorite places, and identify some challenges and some opportunities. No surprise that traffic was one of the top challenges. North-south connections, again, kind of all of these sort of fall into a traffic type of scenario. Potential for new businesses, that was an opportunity identified, and then preserving of open space and alternative transportation are some other opportunities to think about when we design. And it's important to also remember that the design of your developments matter. Not all commercial developments are created equally. And one of the ways that they can differ is how they provide for the public realm. I would ask you, which of these two spaces would you rather walk along, with your dog on a Sunday afternoon or go buy some groceries at? This stuff isn't rocket science. Developers and planners across the U.S. are recognizing a trend towards providing for a little bit more friendly public realm. A couple of the tools that we can use as we design are density and mixing of uses. Mixing of uses can provide benefits such as what we see on Dixon Street, where we've got the Waffle House below, commercial below, and condos above. It can provide added density to an area. It can help reduce congestion in terms of vehicular congestion because people can walk to these places. They also provide for shared parking, and they provide nice transitions between areas that are strictly commercial or strictly residential. Again, the Feltners, Flying Burrito, or Feltner Brothers and Flying Burrito in the Metro building near Spring and West provide the same type of a mixed-use environment. Density can't be, design cannot be ignored when we just propose to have higher density developments. In the absence of design, it can result in some unfortunate developments, but when we pay attention to design, the results can be a lot nicer. Transportation is something I know that's focus of everybody's mind. I want you to remember that the basic function of a public street is to provide public space and to provide efficient means of transportation for people from point A to point B. And the way that those people have decided to, transport themselves has changed over time. We started in horse and buggy, and then we moved on to streetcars and rubber tire buses and automobiles and bicycles. But one thing has remained constant. People have always chose to transport themselves on foot. And so I think it's important that our public streets provide adequate, safe space for pedestrians. And there are nice examples of modern streets that do a good job of providing for moving high volumes of traffic while also allowing safe spaces for pedestrians and bicyclists and public transit. This example from Eugene, Oregon has a thoroughfare where the high moving traffic is out here while providing an access street or a slip lane to the side for the slower moving traffic and provides nice access to the commercial spaces, also a place for the cyclist. This multi-way boulevard in Eugene and then Garland Avenue, I'd like to point out, are both state highways, which Wedington Drive is also a state highway. So this nut can be cracked when working with state departments of transportation. No transit discussion is complete without mentioning the concept of transit shed, that half-mile walkable radius around transit stops. Transit-oriented development can happen in this area. That half-mile radius is about a 10-minute walk for folks. Natural scapes are another thing we may want to consider with the Wedington area. There's some spaces that we want to remain undeveloped or in their natural state, such as the wetlands near the wastewater treatment plant. One way, that's the slide I meant to be talking on. One way that we can incorporate nature into our designs is by using a concept called low-impact development, where we try to mimic natural systems and treat stormwater with vegetation. Provide spaces for the stormwater to run in and infiltrate. So as you guys think about the Wedington neighborhood, I want you to really focus on what's missing and what could help us make this neighborhood more complete. Would people like to see a farmer's market out here? Where's the nearest bicycle shop? What about a branch post office? Would that make life a little bit more convenient and decrease the number of auto trips in the neighborhood? How about some safer pedestrian crossings across Wedington Drive? A multi-use path across the freeway. Anybody like to see that? Is there a decent bakery out here anywhere? How about a space for a neighborhood garden or a branch library? So where do we go from here? The opportunity you have today is to think about the spaces that you know and imagine What's possible? How could they grow up? Are we okay with the status quo? Or can we imagine something a little bit nicer? All right, now it's time for you guys to get to work. Here's your ground rules. We're going to focus on what, not just how. I want you to build up your ideas at your tables. I want you to draw on these maps, get visual. You know, we need to take these maps with us when you're done and use them as our design tool to help really bring your ideas to fruition. So please draw on your maps. Argue with your pencils. Let's limit our speeches, and most importantly, let's have a little bit of fun. You know, why, if you don't have it there, you may want to tell us why.
Take those notes and pen and write the name of a neighborhood or a place. You know, it could be Fayetteville, it could be anywhere.
Anywhere in the world.
Anywhere in the world that you would like to see this area more resemble in the future. So, if you a neighborhood, if you want to say,
or just
if you
a
want to say
business.
Paris, France, it's fine. If you want to say the mall,
That's the storage units.
Oh, that's storage.
This is self-storage behind Casano's Pizza.
take a post-it note and write the name of the neighborhood or place in Fayetteville or around the places where you're concerned with neighborhood. Because I know a lot of the layout around us, there's a lot of things just inside the city are going to be. I know there's a trail system plan, you know, and there's a percentage of following out.
And we'll talk about that when we talk about our transportation. Yeah, you've got Hamstring Creek and Owl Creek and
When I think actually,
Where it's all lined up with nothing but huge businesses, those are there for us. We rarely need them.
one is
in California, where this was taken somewhere else, and you couldn't tell it any different than going out on choice. So, you know, we can do things such as building styles, use of native stone, native plant material. We can do a lot, even though it is a commercial business. Chainsaw, we can do a lot just through design guidelines, even though we know this is going to be commercial. So that's part of our solution as far as the appearance. It's going to be commercial. We realize it's going to be commercial, but it doesn't have to look like a strip shopping center from the 60s. You can design
Major cities, bars and families,
Texas, you mentioned multi-use.
yeah, Frisco's grown too much recently.
It's got great. It's got this huge street that comes in and then it fractures off into other streets, and it's got a church in each intersection. And I like the way that it kind of sort of your arrival in the city, and you can it has a way of sort of dispersing the traffic to the other parts. I like the way it carries a lot of traffic, but it's also a beautiful place and people hang out.
Let's just keep throwing out ideas of neighborhoods or interesting places. You had one you were talking about.
People can go back and forth, you know, and they hit all the shops on both sides, coffee shops and restaurants in there along with shopping.
Designated. There's nothing designated. People on this side of the apartments trying to cross over into there. Kids look like they're going to get hit every year. And they're young people.
It's scary trying to cross that.
We've got all the hotels right down here and all the restaurants. It's scary to get from one of those hotels walking to even a restaurant because the connectivity is just not.
Politician, I probably shouldn't say land use is my favorite place, should I?
All right, we'll catch Rhonda when she gets back. Everyone grab a marker.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice building.
Take a marker or whatever you like to draw with. So the next item we have to do is,
And this is just hard to move around.
in your opinion, what has the potential within the Wedington corridor? Coming back, so I'll pause a question for you. Where in the corridor has the potential to become the heart of the neighborhood, where you go for entertainment, recreation? Think of the farmer's market, where you go to see and be seen. Think about the square, Dixon Street Entertainment Districts, the places you've been that you just talked about. Think about those qualities. Where in this corridor has the potential to become that? And then I want you to circle it, draw a square around it if you're very, I think it's this block here, or maybe it's this block here, or maybe it's a little spot, or maybe it's just this general area, however you want to locate that.
Time frame of when it could become, because for example, like right now this all just got developed, but it's in a good location that over the next, let's say 30 years, as these, maybe these can be moved or changed into a denser location, for example, whereas this is wide open, so it's a nice crossroads, so it seems like a place where it could something to tie, where you've all, you said, somebody said someplace where everybody goes, right? You
a drawing card.
that's a place, this that we're sitting in right now is a place that draws a lot of people, and in fact, now that I've been inside, it's going to draw me. My family's probably going to start coming here.
Yeah.
You're right. Right there's a wide open spot. Why not make that a...
And is this all land?
That's a good point.
No one has a plan for it. That's the other thing.
And in fact, you look at
This is,
that.
well, it's Ozarks Electric, that's Air Freight.
The air freight guy owns this right now.
What if we kind of went?
He may have purchased that,
That's the Walmart.
Maybe,
No, that's
And you were
Walmart.
talking earlier about Wedington sort of being a divider. Look what we did. We do two things on both sides of Wedington that are close together. Kind of is a cool breeze across the Wedington. A cool intersection like with the roundabout where everybody can.
Yeah, a big
there's our
anchor
square.
right there. Now, what's the size on that?
Because like I said, a post office would be great because I have to go uptown all the time. But I thought, well, is the postal service even going to be here in 10 years?
What do you call those? What do you call
They're
those?
probably not
FedEx?
building any branch
Like the one shipment,
Yeah, or yeah,
the
yeah.
shipment store.
Yeah.
Not necessarily
Like a UPS store or something.
If you could,
You got to be careful of that. Now, let me tell you why you may not want to do that.
Commercial and residential.
Okay? You just encourage strip malls. If you have a very narrow strip along your corridor, you tend to promote strip center type development that faces the highway. Is strip center development what you want?
That may be what she wants.
That's what I just
No, we just.
That's why I just asked you.
Waldron's on this corner, and they elected to go down here. So I imagine that'll be open for development.
No, I thought they were still going there.
now let's say, this was Civic Heart versus the commercial heart that you have.
Yeah.
Also tying together, but
I was going to say there's several that are.
I was thinking also,
Like Captain Kirk, Captain Kirk was the odds-on favorite. All right, question 2. What type of commercial sidewalks do folks prefer? Had a pretty strong showing for A. Slide 3. Pretty evenly split, it looks like, between the raised crosswalk and the at-grade crosswalk. Wow. The results are obvious here. No need for a recount, I don't think. Yeah, Matt, you're on the right track, buddy. Again, we have a strong favorite. Cycle path. Cycle track. Better get to work on those, Matt. All right. What type of intersection? Pretty clear winner. Single family home preference. Pretty split decision there. Multifamily. Slight favorite, A. Which apartment building do folks like? B seems to be the winner. Mixed-use development seems to have preference. Preference for commercial developments with on-street parking. I believe that was option B is a picture of, I think it's either Willow or Washington Street, that one over 46th Avenue. Roundabout appeared to be the favorite here. Which 5-lane road design is preferred? Against, I can't remember the name of that street in Boulder, Colorado, on the right is B. Traffic calming. Folks preferred the cop over the education slightly, but not near as much as they like the physical traffic calming. Folks would like to see a plaza. All right. And a preference for higher speeds on in more rural areas, it looks like. Final answer. Yeah, we'd like to see more community events out here. Okay, now we're going to have Group 1 get up here and present their top 5 ideas and their concepts to us. Each group is going to spend about 5 minutes doing their presentation, and we're gonna be kind of recording notes while that goes on. So, Group 1, come on up here.
First, as a citizen from this area, I'd like to thank the City of Fayetteville for having this exercise. I think it's been very useful, and hopefully generate some good ideas. We had a good discussion, a lot of different things, but one of the things we were kind of focusing on was how we wanted this to look in the future. So some of our top ideas we came up with was sort of the development of a center hub or a kind of a local focused area for both restaurants, businesses, where people could communicate, preferably within walking distance, more of a low impact type design. So that was sort of important. We did quite a bit of discussion on the streets as far as medians, trying to enhance the appearance of the streets, control access with the traffic. I think that was probably everybody's biggest concern in the future. And generally kind of the support of the plans to extend Salem and Rupel, both north and south, because we think that really will open up some access. One of the things that's sort of more down on the nitty-gritty was the concept of what we refer to as a vernacular landscape. You may hear this term sustainability, but it's basically using local source materials, local building materials. Basically, we want Northwest Arkansas to look like Northwest Arkansas, not like every other shopping center in the country. And I use the example sometimes about, show them a strip shopping center, my students, and it's like, can you tell me where you're at in the United States? And they can't tell me where they're at because they all look alike. So part of the thing on the developing building codes and whatnot would be using, use our native stone, use our native plants, use kind of vernacular landscape, those sorts of things. So even though it's going to be developed, it doesn't have to look like everything else in the country. Let's see, what else? Kind of just some a different, enhanced police presence as the population grows out here. Maybe instead of just having police drive by on patrol cars, maybe we could have some policemen on bicycles or something like that, particularly if we were to develop some of the center hub areas or something like that. Just a presence that would, prevent crime. And then we just sort of outlined, based on the same exercise everybody else did, some of the areas that we would like to see addressed, particularly, the transportation issues. I think one of the more interesting things we did was think about how we could connect some of the trails already planned or existing trails, how we could actually do that connectivity to tie in generally with the plans, and then develop actually some recreational areas along some of these watersheds. So I think that's about it, unless I'm missing anything. I think overall we'd like to see a balance between development and also density. You know, we'd like to try to control where we're just not all stacked up on top of each other, but you know, we have to be balanced in doing that. So that's just one of the concerns that I think the city should keep in consideration in the future, is that delicate balance, which is really hard to do.
And
So,
whenever we did the promoting the cross streets, also the zoning to support that, like the business zoning, I think.
right, and then also make sure on business zoning and whatnot that we actually can maybe support some more local neighborhood type businesses, particularly within walking distance and that sort of thing. So that's more of a zoning issue, but needs to be kept in mind in the future. Okay, number 2.
Okay, we just saw this as a great opportunity to make Wedington the visual road that we always want. The tree-lined streets and the nice shops and stuff like that, to eliminate the mistakes that we were having in the curb cutting on the beginning of Wedington, and also, you know, the visual, you know, streets that we have like College and 6th Street, to get away from those and make Wedington actually the beautiful street we know it can be. One of the things we did identify is Rupel and Wedington as being like a central business hub and an entertainment hub, with a lot of the smaller shops that we want, like a lot of coin-operated laundry or you know, little business shops and stuff like that. We identified that as the best possible place to make that little development possible. One of the biggest problems we saw was the streets, the traffic congestions, particularly here on the bridge and here with all the multiple curb cuts. And one of the things we wanted to see was to, as they're developing, is to put streets so that they're not here, making, as they develop out, cutting off the congestions off of Wedington by eliminating a lot of the curb cuts so they're not all dumping in. One of the things with the development of Rupel and Wedington was a possibility of a bus stop area for all the bus stops that would. That Rupel and Wedington is actually kind of a nice halfway point, so that would be a good place to have that all. And then there was also the traffic crosswalks, and then street connections. The Bryce Davis Park has only the east side access. We need some west side access to that too. Let's see, again, the congestion at the bridge, and you know, walking and biking there. I think that, the grid. Well, that was, again, making the grids of streets as they develop out, keeping out the curb cutting. What else was there? Anything else? Did I forget anything else? Is that it? Any group? That was it.
First, we'll look at our opportunities here. We felt that finishing Rupel Road to the south and then Persimmon over the overpass, connecting in, will give another route rather than having to have all the traffic go over where it goes over now on Wedington. By finishing that, then we can swing down to Persimmon and you could go across that way and then connect. We felt that was an important consideration that it's already in the plans, I believe. Natural areas, open space around Owl Creek, we like to keep that preserved. The top ideas, one of the top ideas we had for community cohesiveness and identity would be to have a community center where we had a building that you could have meetings in, clubs could meet in, you could have activities, Oh my. Excuse me. I'm just going to end it, whatever it is. It's probably an advertisement. This community center, we had two areas that we felt, again, Rupel's your center. So Rupel and Wedington here, there's area here, and then, yeah, please. This area here would lend itself to a community center, maybe ballparks, tennis courts, badminton courts, bossy ball, pickleball, you name it. Anything that you can do on the grounds without a lot of expense, or the area over, I get turned around, here where we are now, right out here. The same type of activities. They would lend themselves to having a place where everybody within the community could come for activities, and we felt that was an important consideration. Visually appealing landscape around the businesses and the green spaces, rather than just having the highway and the storefront right up there. Have some trees and some shrubs and camouflage a little bit and make it more appealing to the eye. Then the next three were all pretty evenly balanced, and that's improved circulation and the ability to get around, connectivity. And I think that was mentioned by one of the other groups. The ability for you to, when you're on foot or on bicycle, to get to where you want to go without having to go through major intersections or the roads. We want to see small businesses, no big box businesses on Wedington. I don't know as that would be appealing to them anyway, but small neighborhood businesses. And this is the areas that we'd marked that look good. And these will be the areas where commercial will go in anyway. They're going to go right off Wedington because that's the easy feed from Wedington to the business. So those will probably be acquired first as far as any future expansion. Let's see, what have I missed? Have I got it all? Traffic congestion, has been mentioned, is a big problem. Okay, if you're trying to get on the other side in the morning, I don't have to tell you what you're up against. So taking the Rupel through down to 62 is important because it gives us another avenue out. And taking Persimmon over is the other area that will really, the other solution that'll really help us. Is that it? Okay.
Group 4. Well, one of the things I noticed right away is there's a lot of consensus building. A lot of the things that we came up with are very similar to the other ideas. And so, I mean, I think that it's really interesting that the neighborhood is really coming together around some core principles. I mean, a couple of the ones that we identified were, in Group 4, were the need for walkability and livability on the streets. Bicycle-friendly streets as well, and then, of course, dealing with the traffic. Our principal ideas were to create, first, neighborhood hubs. We talked about having multiple hubs, perhaps, to deal with the length of the neighborhood. The primary ones that we identified were the Rupel and Wedington intersections, and that's what we've been hearing from some of the other groups. As well as sort of what is sort of an existing hub now around Harps on that end of Wedington, and then maybe in the future around Double Springs Road at Wedington. And then connecting all of these with a multi-use transit corridor that involves streets with median line streets, bus pullouts, slips, separated bicycle trails, and this sort of thing. And then in the hub sections have mixed development, residential, retail, and reaching out to businesses and drawing the kinds of businesses that we want and need in the neighborhood, bakeries, dry cleaners, gift shops, whatever it is that we want. And then maybe using some of our existing undeveloped space to have a combination of not only community centers, but also civic space, pavilions perhaps, increased parkland. One example that we identified here is this undeveloped space adjacent to the Boys and Girls Club that is right now an empty parking lot and field. And then as other groups have done, we strongly emphasize the need to create multiple access points across 540 on Persimmon and to use these to integrate the emerging trail system on the west side of Fayetteville with the trails in the center of town and around the university. What have I missed? Have I got them all? Good. Great. Thanks.
Turn these on. Is this on? Okay, good. Our group was mainly focused on the traffic congestion problems, and as everybody knows, it's pretty difficult. That was pretty hard to get away from. One of our strongest ideas was improving this connection over 540 for pedestrians especially, because you can't get across with a bike or walking. It's just 2 or 3 foot strip. And also improving public transportation out Wedington, not necessarily more buses, but clear stops, not throw more money into it, but just more efficient and clear locations. Also, completing the frontage roads to relieve this bottleneck down here and Ruppel, just to relieve the traffic density out there. We felt like moving the heart of the neighborhood further west. It seems like that's kind of a recurring idea. Move it more out where we are now by the Boys and Girls Club and focus, all the commercial stuff out here too. And at the same time, possibly connecting the trail system across Wedington with, green space and parks that would connect and kind of go through that dense area. So we'd move the heart further towards Ruppel and focus out here. And to set aside some of the green fields now as green space and kind of so commercial couldn't come in or just more clearly defined. We also wanted to get a couple more crosswalks across Wedington now, further towards the 540 intersection for the safety for people crossing, like going to Harps or other way to Walmart for foot traffic. I think that would be more appealing so people wouldn't feel like they had to jump in their car just to get across the street. And it kept coming back, connecting Ruppel just to relieve that bottleneck traffic, connecting to the existing trail system, especially, this park to the Boys and Girls Club. We felt like that intersection would be very important. I think that's about it. Okay.
Again, we're kind of echoing a lot of the same ideas. I think it's insightful that members of the neighborhood all kind of agree on similar items. So starting with the two most prominent parts of our discussion was, first was what we kind of called a neighborhood center or neighborhood hub. And again, we put it at the intersection of Wedington and Ruppel. And we spent a lot of time talking about what that might look like geographically, but also in terms of urban form and mixed use, and applying kind of a transect urbanism type of development code to encourage that. So that was probably the strongest point of consensus for our group. And then the second most important idea as far as this list goes, was converting Wedington into a type of boulevard, tree-lined boulevard. So that would have obvious effects of slowing traffic, but it would increase the aesthetics of it as well. And then there are lots of ties, as you can see. I should point out first, though, public transit. This isn't actually an accurate representation of our group. 3 of these dislikes we can attribute to Mr. Hoskins in the back. But more importantly, connectivity was a big thing about creating better north-south connections, but also, of course, crossing 540. Right now, everything bottlenecks along Wedington, so what are some other opportunities for crossing 540? Bicycle trails were an obvious big part of that. We all agree that the importance of bicycle trails. Parks and plazas kind of got mixed together, but the presence of parks people seem to want. And then along the notion of neighborhood center, also maybe putting in a library or a science center in this area next to the Boys and Girls Club to try to enhance the whole idea of a neighborhood hub. And then one last thing that didn't make this list, but we did talk about in terms of sustainability, is finding ways to create more regional detention ponds to manage stormwater runoff, because there's lots of development, lots of parking lots, and that's an issue that we have to address. Yeah, feel free to look at our map. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think those were some really great final presentations. A lot of similar ideas from many of the groups. I'm excited to take all of this information now when we go into our design studio and really try and work out all of the ideas into a master plan document. And as we go through that process, I want to make sure and invite all of you to come back to our open house that we're going to have on Monday from 5 to 8 p.m. We'll have stuff pinned up in the hallway down by the boardroom, which is near the entrance to the Boys and Girls Club. And then to come back for the final presentation on next Thursday night in this room at 6 o'clock p.m. And I think that pretty well concludes today's activities. Leaf has one little exciting thing he wants to show us, a word cloud of all of your comments. This is what all we heard today. Kind of from the notes that we took from your final presentations. Before everybody leaves, feel free to grab another little bit of coffee here or another little snack. And thank you all very much for coming. We really appreciate and value your input. Thanks a lot. Good evening. My name is Peter Nierengarten. I am the Director of Sustainability and Strategic Planning for the City of Fayetteville. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the Work in Progress presentation for the Wedington Corridor Plan. This is the 4th neighborhood plan that the City of Fayetteville has done. Previous plans were for the Walker Park neighborhood, the Fayette Junction neighborhood, and the Downtown Master Plan. We have a creative and talented design team that has worked really hard on this process and this charrette all week. And I'd like to take just a moment to recognize the folks who have been working their butts off in this building, putting this plan together for us this whole week. We have Jesse Fulcher. Please stand up when I say your name, please. Jesse Fulcher, Allison Jumper, Matt Mihailovich, Leif Olson, Jeremy Pate, Andrew Garner, Christina Jones, and Quinn Thompson right here. These guys deserve a round of applause. I'd also like to say a big thank you to the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club. They've hosted, this is the third presentation we've done in a week here, and they've hosted us all week, and they've been really great to work with. Anytime we needed to print something or, this podium, they've been here to help us out. So, and providing these great spaces for us. So I'd like to thank them as well. The Wedington area has seen significant growth in the past 15 to 20 years. I'm sure many of you are aware of that. We've seen a lot of new development, new commercial development along the Wedington corridor, and a lot of new neighborhoods surrounding the Wedington area. One of the most important questions to answer during this process is how the area will continue to grow and create a synergy that ties this neighborhood together. These developments represent a change, and the main purpose of the Wedington corridor charrette is to determine and get input from all of you on how we want to see this area change. Here's our agenda for this evening's events. We'll get a quick welcome from Sarah Lewis in a few moments, and then we'll get an update on the progress of the plan. I'll tell you a little bit about the guiding principles that we were able to develop based on input from the public, and then I'll talk just a few moments about our next steps. Our charrette schedule for this week, of course, last Thursday night we met in this room for our kickoff event. On Saturday morning, we met in here again, and we had about 36 folks who worked for 3 hours in small groups to come up with many design ideas and options for the Wedington corridor plan. Then we had drop-ins all week long during our design studio just down the hall. We also had an open house on Monday night where the public could come in and kind of see where our work was at, give us some feedback. And then, of course, tonight we're here for our work in progress presentation. If anybody's got any questions about the plan, please feel free to call our planning office or check out our website. I'd now like to ask Sarah Lewis to come up here just for a minute to say a few words.
Welcome everyone, and thank you for coming. I'd like to know who has already been at one of the events. Did you come already? Yay, well that's really important. Who's here for the first time and learning about it and ready to get our ideas tonight? Yeah, that's good. So my name is Sarah Lewis. I'm one of the Ward 4 City Council members. Rhonda Adams is the other Ward 4 City Council member, and so we're really glad to have you and to have you come out in support of this type of planning. And I frame it in my mind in this way is that the decisions we make are based on the options we see before us. And so this process, this type of neighborhood planning is a way to develop the options that in later decisions we have these options before us. And so it's so important that we have these types of neighborhood planning events. We get neighbor citizen input, staff input, everybody working together on what's the vision so that those options can be presented during the decision-making process later. And this is the fourth one, I believe, in the city of Fayetteville. It makes us a unique community that these are a part of our planning process. I'm certainly very supportive of it, and I've been very supportive of it, and I'm mostly because this community supports this type of meeting. You come out and you participate, and we support each other in that, and I really appreciate that. And really want to support the staff and all the work. I always think this is kind of like a miracle. Like they bring all your ideas together and they create these images to present what they heard from you. And so this is still a time to give input. If you have other ideas tonight, I hope you'll share those. And again, thank you so much for coming, and really appreciate you taking part in this, and I hope you'll continue to be a part of this process. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Sarah. So last Thursday night we kicked things off with a history lesson from Jesse Fulcher. We had about 75 people in this room. Jesse talked to us about the history of the area starting all the way back in the 1820s. Then he fast-forwarded things to 1994 when development really started to occur in this area. And the point that Jesse really drove home for us is the rapid growth that this area has seen between 1994 and 2012. And I think that growth is the main reason why City Council selected and supported the selection of the Wedington corridor for this year's neighborhood plan. We had a kickoff survey on Thursday night. We asked folks to identify some of the challenges and the opportunities in the neighborhood. Of course, traffic and congestion were identified as challenges. Interestingly, some of the opportunities folks identified were the opportunities for better bicycle connectivity in the neighborhood, and then also preservation of some of the open space and natural areas in the neighborhood. And on Saturday morning, we met in this room. We had we divided groups into 6 groups, and we had 6 to 7 people per table. Each group was reminded, all the groups were reminded about the goals of City Plan 2030, prioritizing infill and discouraging sprawl, honoring the traditional town form, growing a livable, active transportation network, so favoring that bicycling and walking, attempting to assemble an enduring green network, so a green ribbon of natural spaces that are connected, and then creating opportunities for attainable housing. We asked folks, or presented a visual preference survey to folks where we asked them to choose between 18 different slides that presented either 2 or 3 options in terms of designs that they liked. And then we got to work at our tables after we listened to some food for thought. We started by asking folks to focus on this concept of developing a neighborhood identity for the Wedington area. And then we worked on defining a heart for the Wedington neighborhood. And finally, as part of developing transportation options, we asked folks to place dots relative on the map to where they lived, worked, and played, and we asked them to think about providing better connectivity for all modes of transportation into, out of, and within the Wedington corridor. At the end of that small group work, each of the groups was asked to identify their top ideas, and then they presented those to everyone. We took all of those top ideas and created a word cloud out of them. And the most interesting thing, I think, and one of the strongest responses we received from folks was this concept of developing a neighborhood center, or the heart of the neighborhood, near the intersection of Wedington and Rupel. And interesting how they kind of lined up on the word cloud. We also heard a lot about providing better bicycling connectivity, providing access management, congestion relief, providing walkability, and providing for mixed-use development. At the end of that event, staff took all of the information that we received from the public, and we spent the next few days coming up with conceptual designs and really trying to incorporate, take your ideas and create them into a cohesive vision. We debated the merits of each of the design options that we developed. And with your help on Monday night at our open house, we narrowed down those design options to what we came up with our final design solution. At our open house on Monday night, we also asked folks to give us a little bit of feedback. 21 of the 35 people who attended gave us comments, and we used those to continue to refine our design. So what did we hear from you all? Well, we were able to develop 4 guiding principles based on the input that we received from the public. And they are, number 1, redefining Wedington Drive as Wedington Parkway. The second one, I already mentioned, envisioning the heart of the neighborhood along Rupel Road at the intersection of Wedington Drive. Supporting multimodal transportation connections, both into and out of the neighborhood and then within the neighborhood. And then supporting a green ribbon of protected spaces that connect people and places. As we created a design for the new Wedington Parkway, we sought to manage speed, access, and congestion with a tree-lined boulevard that has safe pedestrian crossings and provides better access both to and across 540 for vehicles, pedestrians, and bicycles. One of our first clues that this boulevard concept was supported by the public was during the results of the visual preference survey. The idea of a boulevard concept received overwhelming support during this survey. Another clue came from some of the top ideas we got from several of our tables. When we asked folks to vote on their top idea with the green dots, the ideas with more numbers of green dots mean that they received more favor. These ideas of a tree-lined boulevard really rose to the top of the top ideas. So I think we took that idea to heart. This is our concept for Wedington Drive. It includes a tree-lined boulevard down the entirety of what we're now calling Wedington Boulevard, not Wedington Drive. This will help manage access, and it'll limit, by limiting left turn conflicts. We replaced 2 of the signals on the west side of Wedington, and 540 with this roundabout. So we got rid of the 2 signals that used to sit right there. And this will help keep traffic, flowing. It won't have that pulse, that start and stop from those traffic signals anymore. We also converted Shiloh to a 2-way street. We think that'll help revive this intersection and make this a little bit more viable in terms of providing better access. And finally, we added, since we removed signals here, we put 2 signals back here, but these will work in synchronous together, and then we provided pedestrian connectivity across the street in between those signals. So this is the Harps up here. So now you can get out of Harps, and you can make a left onto Wedington because you've got a protected signal here. Same for, this is Marvin Street. You can make a left out of Marvin as well. This is the rendering of what that area will look like. You can see the signals at Marvin and Shiloh right here with the pedestrian crossing, a roundabout in the background. Nice tree-lined boulevard. Really looks rather sporty, I'd say. Our idea for the roundabout also came from the visual preference survey. It was, again, strongly supported by the public. As you get further to the west down Wedington, our design option for that area of Wedington Boulevard sticks with the tree-lined median concept, but we also threw in this tree-lined area to the side, and we included what we're calling a slip lane. This is sort of a multi-way boulevard concept. And this slip lane provides access to these businesses along Wedington Drive, low speed, lower traffic. It also provides bicycles for connectivity through this area. And then we've got parallel parking along that slip lane. When you get to the western end of Wedington Boulevard, it turns into more of Wedington Parkway in this area. And we really went wild with the amount of trees. We moved the existing side paths out much further from the street, so that if you're on the side path or on Wedington Drive, you really have that kind of feel like you're either coming into town from the country or you're leaving town into the country, which is actually what you're doing when you're that far out on Wedington.
Excuse me, where was that starting at? Was that the street starting at?
That would be, that's Broyles right there. Yeah. As part of our second concept for envisioning a new heart of Wedington Boulevard, along Rupel Road, we sought to enhance walkability by creating a Main Street feel in this area. We attempted to infill the neighborhood services and housing at appropriate densities that transition between some of the existing neighborhoods and the more dense urban core that we created and around our central community space. Again, this idea came from the top ideas at almost every one of the tables that we had. Folks even gave us some design options to kind of work with. We really took this idea to heart and created several concepts for this core area. Many of these were up for review at the open house on Monday night. Here's what we finally came up with. This design, this is north is up. We've got Wedington intersecting Rupel Road right here. We created a central green space in this area. This could be appropriate for a farmer's market or some other type of community event. The area is really, unprogrammed, kind of active or passive recreation. We've got this covered space for vendors to set up. It's surrounded by commercial buildings, and then we've got commercial buildings, on Rupel Road as well. We've got some lower density residential areas, fading back to our existing residential areas. To the south along Rupel Road, we programmed in a space for a junior high school and then a future community center with a track back behind. Also a little bit of residential area here as well. Here's a rendering of what that central green looks like. Again, it's got small business retail surrounding it in a very walkable setting around the square. Kind of picture the Fayetteville downtown square, except pull out the post office, the old post office, and put a central green in there instead. The idea of providing the central community space and small retail, again, was supported by the comments we received from many of our groups on Saturday. The smaller walkable retail concept was also, again, supported during our visual preference survey. Here's a rendering of the southern end of Rupel Road. You can see the junior high school here, the community center, really framing this tree-lined Rupel Road well with the existing townhouses on the west side of Rupel. Many of the residential units up in this northwest area fit into what we would call the missing middle type housing. We heard a little bit about this from a couple of our groups. These houses range from anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 square feet. They're great starter homes or homes for smaller families. We think this type of home provides a really nice transition, again, from our more dense areas to our existing neighborhoods that are behind the picture here. As we designed multimodal transportation connections for our third guiding principle, we attempted to fill in a lot of the missing links for all the modes of travel, and we created a new transit hub at a park and ride. We also attempted to make the streets safer with better crossings on Rupel Road and Wedington and other streets. Again, this idea was strongly supported by the top ideas from many of our groups on Saturdays. Got a lot of support for this concept. We had folks work on a transportation connections map, and we took all of those ideas and merged them together into one big map that provides all modes of transit connectivity. We've got connections for Rupel Road to the south to Highway 62. That's already funded on our 2014-2015 CIP. We got improvements for Rupel Road to the north. We show Persimmon Drive coming across 540, as well as a lot of internal connections inside the neighborhood as well. These will provide much better connectivity, allowing people to travel both into and out of the neighborhood without having to get onto Wedington Drive and experience or exacerbate the existing congestion. We also worked really hard at incorporating some of the ideas for trail connections. We provided a trail connection up the west side of I-540 to tie into the existing trail at Mount Comfort. We've got a nice new trail running north and south. In here, we've got an on-street linkage on Wedington Drive, and then we've got a nice little trail down here also. As part of the redesigned crossing over Interstate 540, we proposed a multi-use side path along the north side of Interstate 540 on either a new or a revamped existing Wedington Bridge. When the side path reaches the west end of the bridge, so here's our side path, it goes under our roundabout and then into the interior of our roundabout. Here's what that space feels like on the inside. And then from there, you've got the option to either turn north and go up Shiloh. You can go south along Shiloh as well, or you can hop on our cycle track that continues down the north side of Wedington Drive. The cycle track provides for a buffered space for bicycles, and it has glowing green paint here at the intersections to warn motorists that you're crossing a bicycle route. Our idea for the cycle track again came from our visual preference survey that was strongly supported by the public. In addition to the bicycle facilities, I mentioned the pedestrian crossing we provided here at, between the light at Tahoe and the light at, what's the name of this? Marvin, yes, Marvin. Similar to what we have on Garland Avenue and the university campus. This pedestrian path leads you into the Harps parking lot. We created this nice little pedestrian corridor to take you all the way basically to the front door of that Harps shopping center. Takes you by a nice little food cart here where you can have a burrito or something if you want to. It is. We converted this to a public street. That's part of our concept for providing connectivity. This is already a public street right here, Sarah. But you can't see it all, but we've got public street taking you all the way from Colorado through to Steamboat. Our final idea for providing multimodal transportation options was this idea of a park and ride that I mentioned earlier with a new transit building on the southwest corner of the intersection of 540 and Wedington. For our fourth idea, or for our fourth guiding principle, this idea of creating a green ribbon or corridor, we attempted to create a green network of trails and open space that connects existing parks and schools with other destinations. We also analyzed and capitalized on some of the amazing views that you see to the south in the area, particularly along Rupel Road. Again, we heard a lot about this from many of the tables. Preservation of open space and natural areas was pretty important. We essentially adopted this idea from Group 6 of a trail connecting Bryce Davis Park with the Boys and Girls Club and the Owl Creek area. And we put it right on our master plan. Right there it is. We even expanded upon it, and we made this nice loop that you can take all the way up. You know, some of it is on street, much of it is off street, and then that ties you back into the city's existing trail network at Mount Comfort. The idea of the separated trail was pretty unanimous during the visual preference survey. Not a lot of room for debate there. So here's that area with that trail coming down. Wedington Drive would be up here, this trail coming down, bringing you through this nice open space, past the Boys and Girls Club, past our new junior high, past our senior center. Here's what that view to the south looks like in this area. So next steps. Well, staff's going to work to further refine the concepts that we presented in this design alternative. We'll develop some short, medium, and long-range implementation steps for the project. And then early next year, we'll look to take this project to City Council for approval. Some of the specifics about what we can do, these are still potential items, but we can work with the Highway Department to complete a speed study along Wedington Drive. If we can show that the median speed is below the existing speed, then we can get that speed limit reduced. We can work with the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, put our roundabout design in their traffic model, see if it actually will reduce congestion, and if so, we can talk with the Highway Department further about that. If not, we may have to tweak our design a little bit. We can work with the Highway Department to incorporate our side path idea on our bridge, which they actually are open to. We've had some discussions with them about that. Our boulevard concept, again, we can work with the Highway Department on incorporating that into any future design changes that happen to Wedington Drive. Wedington Boulevard. We can work with the City Council, the Northwest Arkansas Regional Planning Commission, and the Highway Department to develop an access management plan specific to Wedington Drive, and that'll go along with this boulevard concept. Certain areas of the neighborhood have high potential for targeted rezoning to more form-based zoning codes that promote a more walkable, urban type environment. And then we can acquire some of the green space I showed in the presentation through the city's parkland dedication process and through donations to try and build up some of the areas that we showed in here. And then we can amend the Fayetteville Alternative Trails and Transportation Plan to incorporate the proposed changes that I showed to with regard to trails and off-street linkages and on-street linkages. And then a conservation subdivision ordinance also has potential for creating some clustered development, particularly in areas that are further west along Wedington Drive. So I'd like to thank you all for coming. Again, I'd like to extend a huge thanks to the Fayetteville Boys and Girls Club for hosting us for these events, and to staff who worked really hard on developing the concepts and the plan that you'll find at the back of the room, where we have our illustrative master plan and the renderings that I showed in the presentation hanging up. We have a survey that I hope everybody got on the way in. Please fill that out. You can leave it with us tonight, or you can fax it into the office. We'll be posting updates on the website. All of our further meetings, will be posted for community participation as well. It is. We have a more. You can. Yeah. If you go there, you can find a link to our page. Yeah. You can go to the follow the path to the Sustainability and Strategic Planning Department.